Let me tell you something about advice that comes from pain. When a person suffers long enough, they develop a philosophy, a survival theory, a set of instructions they believe would have saved them if only someone had told them earlier. And when they have children, they hand that philosophy down like an inheritance. The problem is that sometimes the philosophy is not wisdom. Sometimes it is just old pain wearing the costume of guidance. Mama Ada loved her daughters completely. Everything she told them came from that love. But love without knowledge is just good intention. And good intention, as this story proves, can quietly destroy the people you are trying to protect. This is not a story about bad daughters. This is a story about what happens when a mother's wound becomes her daughter's instruction manual. Mama Ada was born into a family that had very little and expected her to marry into something better. She did not. She married a man named Papa Ada, who had a good heart, a loud laugh, and almost no financial sense whatsoever. He was the kind of man who could earn decent money on Monday and have none of it by Wednesday without being able to explain where it went. Not because he was irresponsible in the dramatic sense, more because he had never been taught to think about money as something you could shape and direct. To him, money was water. It arrived and it left, and you hoped more would arrive. They had 5 children in 8 years, 2 boys, 3 girls. Then Papa Ada got sick. He was sick for 14 months, during which time whatever savings existed dissolved into hospital bills and treatments that kept promising more than they delivered. Mama Ada sat beside his bed in a government hospital ward on a Thursday evening in the rainy season and watched him leave. She was 34 years old. She had 5 children. She had a small piece of farmland, a 2-room house with a leaking zinc roof, and 11,000 naira in a cloth envelope hidden under the mattress. She counted the 11,000 naira that night after the children fell asleep. She counted it 3 times as if the number might change. It didn't. She put it back under the mattress and sat in the dark for a long time. Then she made a decision. She decided she would not collapse. Not that night. Not ever. She could not afford to collapse. Collapsing was a luxury that required someone else to pick you back up. And there was nobody. So she did not collapse. She was up before 5 every morning from that point. To the farm first, cassava and vegetables, whatever the soil would give her. Then to the market to sell what she had. Then back to make sure the children had eaten. Then whatever evening work she could find, washing clothes for neighbors, grinding pepper for women who had the money to pay someone else to do it, anything. She did this for years. Her hands told the story. They were not the hands of a woman who had been comfortable. They were the hands of someone who had been in a long, serious argument with life and refused to lose. The village respected her, genuinely. Not the performance of respect that people give to the poor out of pity, but the real kind. The kind that comes from watching someone carry something heavy for a long time without putting it down. They said, Mama Ada may be poor, but she is raising her children well. She heard this and it filled something in her. She held on to it. It was one of the few things she had that cost nothing but meant everything. But underneath the discipline and the early mornings and the calloused hands, there was a wound that never fully closed. The wound was this. She was tired. Not the tired that sleep fixes, the other kind. The tired that comes from years of doing everything alone with nothing to show for it but survival. She was tired of counting money at night, tired of making school fee calculations on the back of torn paper bags, tired of wearing the same 2 wrappers for years because buying a 3rd one was not a priority. She did not want her daughters to be tired like this. And so she told them the thing she believed with every part of herself. Find a good man who is already successful, so you will not suffer like me. She said it so many times, in so many ways, in so many small moments, that it stopped being advice and became atmosphere. It was the air in that house. The daughters breathed it in from childhood, and it became part of how they understood the world. A good life meant a man who already had one. Wealth meant finding it, not building it. Success was a destination you married into, not a road you walked yourself. Mama Ada did not teach her daughters this because she was a foolish woman. She taught them this because she was an exhausted one, because she had built things with her bare hands for 20 years and remained poor. Because in her experience, the only women she saw escape that kind of tiredness were the ones who married men who already had something. Her evidence made sense to her. The conclusion she drew from the evidence was the mistake. The daughters were not copies of each other. They received the same message from their mother, but processed it through very different personalities. Ngozi was the first daughter, quiet and observant, in the way of people who listen more than they speak, and therefore understand more than most. She had watched her mother's daily routine with particular attention, not just the suffering, but the system. She had noticed that even in scarcity, her mother organized things. She kept a small notebook where she tracked what she spent and what she earned. She knew which market days were better for which vegetables. She understood timing and patterns in a way that the other children had not paid attention to. Ngozi absorbed this without knowing she was absorbing it. She also heard her mother's marriage advice. She filed it, but something in her was not completely convinced. She had seen her father, a man who had money sometimes and then didn't. She had seen the women on her street who married rich men and still looked tired. The equation was not as simple as her mother presented it. She did not say this out loud. She was not that kind of person. She simply kept it in the part of her mind where unresolved questions live and waited. Adaeze was the second daughter, and the most beautiful of the three, in the way that tends to get noticed first in a room. She loved beautiful things with a passion that was almost innocent in how undisguised it was. Fabric, jewelry, shoes, the way a well-set table looked, the way certain women carried themselves when money was not a problem. She wanted that. She wanted it specifically and completely, and she saw nothing wrong with wanting it. Her mother's message landed in her like a confirmed truth. Of course you married a rich man. Why would you do anything else? What was the alternative? To spend your life on a farm before sunrise like her mother? No, there was a better option, and Adaeze intended to take it. She was 17 when she started making her mental list of requirements. By 20, she had refined it considerably. Chiamaka was the last daughter, and the loudest in every sense. She walked into rooms like an announcement. She had opinions about everything and shared them at full volume. She was funny and magnetic and completely certain about her own worth, which was not a small thing. She had also heard her mother, but she had taken the philosophy and expanded it significantly. Her mother said marry a successful man. Chiamaka heard this and decided that successful was the minimum requirement. She wanted exceptional, commanding, powerful, the kind of man other men looked at with visible envy. She said it openly and often. If my husband is not rich, I will not marry him. The village women who heard this shook their heads. The village men who heard this either laughed or made careful note of it, depending on their own financial situation. The elders said nothing out loud, but their faces said several things. Mama Ada heard it and smiled. Her daughter had ambition. That was good. She did not yet understand that ambition aimed entirely at acquisition is not ambition. It is appetite. But what happens next changes everything. Watch out for part 2.